Most stories are built on a deal. You follow a character long enough, watch them want something hard enough, and the story pays you back. They get it, or they lose it. Either way, the wanting meant something. The Sopranos keeps making that deal, and then quietly doesn't honor it. Junior becomes boss. Christopher gets made. Carmela builds her spec house. Tony accumulates more power than he ever had when the show started. These aren't partial wins. These are the things they actually wanted, and none of them are better off. For a long time, I assumed this was the show being nihilistic. Crime doesn't pay. Power corrupts. You know the reading. But nihilism is passive. What The Sopranos does is something more deliberate and darker. There's a specific mechanism underneath all of it, one that explains not just why these people are miserable, but why getting what they want makes it worse. It's easy to romanticize their failures and miss the fact that a lot of them don't fail. Junior becomes acting boss of the DeMeo family, and that's what decades of patience and swallowed resentment were supposedly for. Carmela's spec house gets built and sold, largely without Tony, which was the entire point. Christopher gets his button. Tony survives a war with New York, a near assassination, multiple FBI investigations, and comes out with more control, not less. These are not people defeated by circumstance. They are people who got the thing. So watch what the show does immediately after. Junior realizes within weeks the boss title is mostly theater. Tony is making the real decisions, and everyone in the room knows it. Carmela sells the house, sits with the money, and still feels like Tony Soprano's wife. Christopher gets made, and keeps using. No sad music, no window staring. The show just moves on. Of course it does. If getting the thing doesn't change anything, even briefly, why were they so certain it would? The easy answer? They're addicted to wanting. The pursuit is the point. The moment they arrive, they need a new destination. There's something to it. Tony is visibly worse when things are calm. He engineers conflict, picks fights that don't need to happen, seems to require problems the way other people require sleep. But addiction still produces a high. That's the whole reason it's hard to stop. The reward is real, it just fades too fast. These characters don't get the high. Christopher's ceremony doesn't produce a peak that crashes. Junior's first days as boss aren't triumphant, and then hollow. They're hollow from the start. There's no moment of arrival, just absence where the feeling was supposed to be. And here's what the chase theory can't explain. They keep returning to the same kinds of goals. Power, recognition, control, legitimacy. Over and over, even after those categories have already failed them. If they just needed forward motion, any goal would do. But they don't pick randomly. Something keeps pulling them back to those specific targets. The chase theory describes the behavior. It doesn't explain it. These characters aren't chasing goals because they want the goals. They're chasing goals because the goals provide cover. A moving target gives you somewhere to look that isn't the thing you don't want to look at. Christopher is the clearest example. His film career looks like ambition. Someone trapped in the wrong life trying to tunnel out. That's how he narrates it to himself. He was meant for something else. If he could just get the movie made, he'd be okay. Then Cleaver gets made. Christopher and Tony sit in the theater watching it together. The film exists. He did the thing. And he's sitting next to the man it's partly about in this terrible charged silence. And there's no version of that moment where he gets to feel what he thought he'd feel. Because the film was never about filmmaking. It was about proving his life was his. That he'd chosen it. That some part of him hadn't been handed to this world before he was old enough to refuse. Nothing external could prove that. Junior and Carmela run the same logic in different directions. Junior doesn't want the title. He wants to silence the part of him that knows he was always going to be second. Carmela doesn't want the house. She wants to feel like someone who made real choices. The goal is never the goal. It's what they're hoping the goal will drown out. The show keeps quietly insisting on something underneath all of this. They're not wrong about the wound. Junior really was overlooked. Christopher really was handed a life he didn't choose. The goals are pointing at something true. They're just useless for addressing it, which raises the real question. Do they know that? These are not oblivious people. Tony Soprano reads a room faster than almost anyone in it. He goes to therapy for years because he knows something is wrong and keeps showing up hoping someone can name it. But every time Melfi gets close, he deflects. A joke. Anger. A change of subject. Not because he's too damaged for the truth, because he's already close enough to know he doesn't want to go there. Late in sessions, when he's tired and the guard slips, something else surfaces. The version of Tony who knows exactly what's happening. Then the session ends, and that version goes back under. They're not chasing goals because they haven't figured out those goals won't work. They're chasing because some part of them already has. And if they already know, why doesn't anything change? Here's the thing. The goals failing is the tragedy. But the goals failing doesn't free them from the goals. That's the darker thing. They don't keep chasing because they believe the next goal will finally deliver. They keep chasing because stopping would cost them something they can't afford to lose. Not the goal, themselves. Think about what Junior would have to accept if he genuinely let go. Every year he spent waiting, every slight he swallowed, every moment he held his tongue because his time was coming. All of it gets reclassified. Not as patience, but as loss. Unrecoverable loss. There's no version of that accounting that leaves Junior intact. So he doesn't do it. Tony is the most extreme version of this. His entire sense of self is built around forward motion, being the person who handles things, who never stops. The therapy isn't failing because he can't change. It's failing because changing would require him to sit still long enough to feel the full weight of everything the motion has been keeping at bay. He built himself specifically so he'd never have to do that. So they keep going, not out of hope, out of necessity. A failed goal still leaves you with a next goal, still leaves you with a story, still leaves you as someone moving toward something. Admitting the whole project was wrong doesn't leave you with anything. It just leaves you with the years. The last scene of the show is Tony in a diner watching the door. His family is there. He has everything, and he cannot be present for a single second of it. Because the only version of Tony Soprano that exists is the one who's watching, managing, running the calculation. He got what he wanted. He just couldn't stop long enough to be there when it arrived. That's not a flaw in who they are, it's the price of who they became.